Honorable Tom Williams of PrimeEvents.net. Talk a little high school football. Good morning, Tom.
How are you?
Hey, thanks for joining us. I know you had a long road trip up to West Windsor last night, but a nice win for the Red Raiders.
Yeah, Ocean City pretty much dominated the game. They scored 4 times on the ground and moved the ball in the air as well, and forced about 4 or 5 turnovers. So it was wet, constant drizzle, a little bit of wind, but I guess they'll certainly feel it's worth the trip. Next year, they're going to come down to Ocean City.
Tell us about this Ocean City team a little bit. Tom, you're around them on a weekly basis, and they had a tough start with the schedule they had in September, but it's nice to get that first win under their belt. Do you see them turning things around here in October?
Well, I certainly think that the next 4 games are games in which they should compete and have a chance to win. They play Absegami next week, then Mainland, Middle Township, and Lower Cape May. So I think there's a chance in those 4 games for victory. And then, of course, St. Joe's is their last game before the NJSIA schedule, and they have a Pleasantville team that's obviously better on Thanksgiving. So I think that they've got. I think Oakcrest certainly has turned out to be a solid team. The Ocean City thinks Oakcrest is as fast overall as any team that they've played or scrimmaged so far this year, and that includes Camden. I think obviously Cedar Creek is a solid team, especially at 100%. But yeah, they're building their offense primarily around Andrew Donahue, who went over 2,000 yards in career passing last night, but they developed a little bit of a running game last night. They got Liam Bergman, who was on paper to be their number 1 running back coming into this season, but had some injury problems and played for the first time last night. And they've gotten a great effort out of Isaac Robertson and Dan Walsh running the ball, though especially last night when they each scored twice. And Walsh, I think, is one of the better defensive players among Cape Atlantic League schools. So, they lost a fair amount to graduation, especially in the wide receiver area. One of their best football players, Harry Feifel, was injured in the preseason and out for the year. He's a junior, fortunately, so he'll be back next year. But Andrew Donahue, who's a solid quarterback, is kind of the center of things for them offensively.
We're talking with Tom Williams of PrimeEvents.net. Tom, I know you said they have Mainland coming up in a couple weeks. Tell us a little bit about that rivalry. One of the best rivalries in South Jersey. I mean, you could go 1-9, but if you beat Mainland, that's still something to hang your hat on. It. And tell us a little bit about when these teams get together, just the intensity. You have former players showing up, and that rivalry has been going on for so long, and it's such an intense one.
That's right. It's kind of like a Thanksgiving game during the season, and there's other teams. When Holy Spirit plays Mainland, it has that same feel. Wildwood and Lower Cape May playing last night. I don't know if it has the same feel to the students in the school because they haven't played that much recently, but it certainly does to the alumni. Ocean City and Mainland have played a lot of football. Mainland is about 8 or 9 wins up on Ocean City, especially over the last 10 years. But it's been a great rivalry. They played in the South Jersey Final in 1999. They met in Group 3 other times. And then in the 4 games they've played in tournament action, they've each won twice. So it is a great rivalry. And in the years when Ocean City was in the South Jersey picture constantly, so was Mainland. So both programs were up at the same time, and that made it even more exciting. And of course, if you go way back, Mainland pretty much comes from Ocean City. The Summers Point and Linwood students back in the prior to 1961 came to Ocean City, and when that school opened in Linwood, a lot of people who were attending Ocean City High School ended up at Mainland. So it goes all the way back to the beginning.
Tom, wanted to talk a little bit about a guy you know a lot about and who's really kind of been hamstrung by what may be a little bit of a silly rule that you wrote about earlier this week. Tom Park, the voice of the football team, the basketball team, he's been around that school forever, and I guess he's not really able to work this year because he just retired, and there's some kind of rule where you can't work for the school for 180 days after you retire in any capacity. Tell us a little bit more about that situation. And it's a tough situation for Tom. He just wants to be around the boys and call the games and that kind of thing. And he said he'd even do it for free. He didn't want any money for it, but he's still not allowed to participate.
Yeah, the exception is for coaches. Coaches who retire as teachers are allowed to coach as long as they don't make more than $10,000 for the job, and that $10,000 or whatever they get paid is not pensionable. They could very easily do the same thing with the $35 a game or whatever it is that Tom Park was getting paid by Ocean City. Just say it's not pensionable and let him do it. And you can carry it further outside the area of sports. If there was a great math teacher or a great science teacher at your school who's been there for 25 or 30 years and decides to retire but still has something to bring to the table, why couldn't he come in part-time Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or one class every day, or something like that? That would be a plus for the student body. I understand the basic reason for it. They don't want somebody to retire and then, in effect, go back to work and end up drawing a pension and a salary from the same place.
Right.
That makes sense. But to do it this way, if they can make an exception for a coach who's making up $10,000 to coach a team, then why can't they do it for somebody else who's an announcer or keeps score? I mean, this would apply to somebody who operates the scoreboard or any of a number of or security at the home games, any of a number of little jobs that these schools use their teachers to fill. So it's just something silly, but there's always little silly parts of some of the good rules and regulations that we have, but I think this one's correctable.
Yeah, and it really stinks for the students. They really love having this guy around, and the basketball players, the football players, they all know Mr. Park, and he's become such a part of those teams and those fall days, the fall nights, the Friday nights, as well as on the basketball court. He's kind of one of those guys you just expect to see when you walk into the gym.
Yeah, and he has this phrase he uses all the time, especially in basketball, where he just says Raider ball. And it became so popular at Ocean City that this last winter, when they produced the Raider Nation T-shirts, they put that phrase on the back. It says,
oh, really?
Raider ball, and underneath in smaller letters, Tom Park. So, and in fact, at the first home game when John Bruno worked as the PA announcer for the game at Cary Stadium with Cedar Creek, he had a spotter, a former football player, graduated in June, Jeff Hoffner. And every time Ocean City got the ball, Jeff Hoffner would say Raider ball on the PA system. So they made a little tribute to him, and it's great that they feel that way. I think he was a pretty popular teacher, and at worst he'll be back after March. Maybe in the state tournament he'll get to do a game in March, but I would think he'll be back at the helm the following year, because that 180 days will be up.
Tom, before we let you go, I wanted to get your quick thoughts on the PowerPoint system. Particularly affects the parochial schools. You have these super conferences up in North Jersey with some very powerful teams, and now they're giving teams 1.5 times PowerPoints if you go and play them and lose, twice the number of PowerPoints if they play each other. And you see it happen where a team like DePaul that's 0-3 came into this weekend leading the state in PowerPoints without a win. I mean, it sounds kind of crazy to say, but that's a system we're under at this point. Really affects teams, such as St. Augustine, Holy Spirit, the teams in South Jersey. Will we ever get to a point where we just separate the South Jersey parochials from the North Jersey? Well,
obviously that was the system in football, and they changed it years and years ago because in South Jersey, especially in South Jersey, what they called parochial B then, you wouldn't have very many teams qualify. You had to have a 500 record then, and there were years when St. Joe's became South Jersey champion without playing.
Wow!
Because they were the only team to qualify, and there were a number of other years where there were only 2 or 3 teams qualify, and St. Joe was the number 1 seed, so they got a bye into the final and only had to play 1 game to win the championship. That's why they changed to this statewide grouping, even though it's a violation technically of the NJSIA Constitution. It actually says in the Constitution there can be no state championship in football. So they kind of ignored that and went ahead and did this. Now they've reduced it from 4 to 3 groups in non-public. But, they may go back with that. They're going to vote on it in December. As a matter of fact, it's one of the 3 things that the general membership will be voting on, and that is to return to South Jersey A, South Jersey B, North Jersey A, and North Jersey B for football. It's a difficult situation with those power teams in the North. We understand that. Nobody in the state, or very few people in the state, want to play them, so they were trying to encourage that. It was an idea that probably was created for the right reasons, but I think if you could get NJSI people in a room where it wasn't on the record, they'd tell you it didn't work out the way they think they hoped it would. And in fact, somebody has said, a couple of them have said on the record, obviously we'll review this at the end of the year and see if it has to be tweaked. And it certainly does have to be tweaked, because some of the things that are coming out so far are pretty ridiculous.
Good stuff, Tom. We're up against the break. Appreciate you checking in, and thanks for the information. Have a good weekend, buddy.
Okay, you too.
That was Tom Williams from PrimeEvents.net.